You've got the rep for being, the guy that's always being fit and working out and stuff
Well,
like that.
I used to. I do like to stay healthy, but I'm not a fanatic about it. But Jason Blum is into the CrossFit, and he's like coaxing me out of bed at 7:30 in the morning. He's like, "Come on, pal." I felt guilty.
Well, acting is I would think, would be really responsive to being fit, right? I mean, especially doing stage work, which you have done.
Yeah, I think it's good to just stay healthy for anybody in life. And after having trained, firstly, I got injured in 2000 being drunk on a beach in Thailand, and I had a neck injury tumbling, and that taught me to look after my life.
Really? What were you doing tumbling drunk?
Well, drunkenness leads you to think that all sorts of things are a good idea that are not. And I used to be a bit of an acrobat, and so I thought when I got drunk that I'd probably be a better acrobat, and I wasn't.
And you weren't. Okay.
And I landed on my head.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should talk about The Gift here, which is being described as a horror thriller, which is kind of like, I guess, but it's so much more than that. It stars Jason Bateman and Rebecca Hall. They play this young married couple whose life is going just as they planned it until this chance encounter with an acquaintance of Bateman's from high school sends their world into this tailspin. And that's kind of an understatement for anybody that's seen the trailer, right?
Yeah. I'd describe the movie as like a suburban horror movie with no blood, or a psychological thriller, because, I wanted to make a movie where there's not buckets of blood and there's not a body count, but the terror exists in those people that may have been in our past that we may have wronged, and our inability to look back causes this inability to resolve things, and therefore it leaves an open space for badder things, revenge, retribution.
And, just what you said, yes, I agree with you completely. I think that's what makes this a movie lover's movie and a film lover's movie, and the distinction being that as a movie, you're on pins and needles through the whole thing. Literally, when I was watching it last night, a lot of people were laughing out of, that nervousness that comes when you are completely like thrown for a loop and you're scared as shit.
Yeah.
The way you did the sound design was fucking brilliant.
Oh, great.
It was brilliant. But anyway, I mean, it's a movie lover's movie for that reason. It's like a rattling good tale. But there's also a lot of, there's stuff in it. It's character driven. You brought up the question about looking into the past and stuff. I don't want to say too much because a lot of the pleasures in this movie are the unfolding of these certain plot elements. But so it's a film lover's movie too. But anyway.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I often think that, as I make movies as an actor, we often feel like we can do one thing or the other. We can either entertain or we could be thought-provoking. We can be commercial or we can be thought-provoking and independent or kind of quirky. I believe you can do two things at once,
you believe it, obviously, and you did it, but it's not an easy thing to pull off.
No, but I think that, for me, it was like, having this idea of a guy who runs into his old high school acquaintance who didn't treat so well. It was a really good beginning to a bad things can happen type movie. But along the way, that very social kind of resonance or, social resonance, social context behind a thriller can actually enhance the thrilling elements of the movie because, as you sit in the audience, you go, I'm watching this unfold between these three people, but
right.
Who are those people in the recesses of my mind who might tap me on the shoulder in a homeware store one day and just innocently say, hey, do you remember me? And that to me is terrifying more than an alien descending from the heavens or a ghost sort of inhabiting my new house.
Right.
All respect to those movies, but.
Well, you mentioned the thing too, the trope about the bad things has happened, but that's kind of in some ways turned on its head with there was a line about the bad things can be a gift, and actually I think there's a lot of truth in that line. How we can, if it what's the thing? If it doesn't
kill you,
it makes you stronger. But I believe that.
Well, that's what I mean. Physically, that's what happened to me after my accident in Thailand. I could have had a very bad neck injury that led to worse circumstances for me, but it actually taught me to get in the swimming pool and to go into the Pilates studio because I had to rehabilitate and that made me stronger. But on a social, interpersonal way, sometimes we're afraid of acknowledging our wrongdoings, for example, in context of this film, that seems like an insurmountable task, but it's amazing how easy perceivably difficult tasks are and how easy it clears the road for the future. You know, I tend to write movies, and I have the last few, about people who avoid the truth and avoid the acknowledgement in order that their life is easier in the short term, which creates a ton of obstacles and a spiraling out of control in the long term. You know, so the progression, I think...
It's very noir, too, you know.
It is, and that first movie I wrote for my brother called The Square, I had that kind of guy going, oh, well, I'll just keep digging out of this hole, but inevitably the hole gets deeper. And I think there's even a reference to that in our film when Rebecca reads that Bible quote of, he has dug a pit and fallen into the pit which he has dug. And for some reason, this theme keeps resonating with me. And in this film, it's progressed to the point where the central character is not even trying to find his way back to the good place. It's his wife and them as an entity. And she is the voice of reason going, wouldn't it be a good thing? You have no obligation, but wouldn't it be a good thing for you to just acknowledge this stuff? And he's like, absolutely not. It's not my fault. Life is a game of winners and losers. And as a result, stuff will happen.
We're talking to Joel Edgerton. He is the writer, the director, and ensemble cast member of The Gift, which explores the impact of two people's shared pasts colliding in the present and the collateral damage that ensues. Joel, is it true you said something in an interview about that movies really weren't on your radar? That you were more really into theater. So, I mean, was movies just a logical extent? I mean, you're an actor, right? And I guess movies pay better than stage. I mean, so, you went from one to the other, but you really weren't thinking about film? You were just...
I was thinking about it. I mean, I used to run around pretending I was Indiana Jones and I fantasized about movie characters. I really had that. They were part of my whole dreaming as a kid. But when I became an actor, my aspiration was to become a stage actor because I truly thought the movies were out of my reach. I lived in a small town in Australia. And then as I moved closer to the city and I went to drama school, the idea of appearing on TV, it was a possibility. And then appearing in a supporting role in an Australian movie was possible. And then I had people like Russell Crowe and Guy Pearce and Nicole Kidman to look at. And as they started sort of crossing over the waters, I was like, well, maybe I could do that, and I started to kind of reach for that. And then as an actor, it's funny, I have this incredibly varied taste in movies as an actor. I'm more interested almost in going from turning everything 180 degrees between movies than it's funny when I write movies, they're all tending to be of the same genre. I've written a couple of comedies, but my real
but you were in you were in movies like Star Wars, which I mean, talk about visibility for your craft.
Well, that really opened the doors for me in Hollywood because you shoot a movie like Star Wars, you secretly know that you're only in like 5 minutes of the movie, but while George Lucas is spending 18 months putting the movie together, you can go to Hollywood and say, hey, I'm in Star Wars, and they don't know how much of it you're in.
Well, they don't need to, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But and real quick, I don't know if people know this, but I think people that follow your career know this. Streetcar Named Desire, you were in a very acclaimed production with Cate Blanchett. You played Stanley Kowalski, which to me, I mean, that's one of the great roles, but at the same time, you're sort of, you're playing a part that's iconically someone else in the public eye. But you got great notices for that. Real briefly, could you talk about that experience?
I had the most wonderful and the most terrifying experience doing that play. It's funny, I've worked with some actors that, if you thought about it as a match-up in the ring, like it was a boxing match, you go, okay, I'm going to go up against Cate Blanchett here. Because, acting is two people working together in a dance, but it's also, in those dramatic instances, it's a battle between two people. And it's funny, I have this sort of disconnect in my head. I don't get fearful of getting matched up with somebody that I have such admiration for as an actor because they're so great and
imagine they would keep you on your toes too, right?
Yeah, but it's like you want to play tennis. You want to play tennis against someone who's as good or better than you. They're going to lift your game. And working with people like Kate, Christian Bale, these people that you watch and love, they make you better. And so that was the great part of it. Being directed by Liv Ullmann, getting to play that role. The terrifying part was suddenly arriving in New York. and feeling like you were just underneath the shadow.
Because the production came from Australia, right? It was transplanted.
Yeah, Australia. Then we went to Washington, D.C.
Right.
And I was still having a great time.
Yeah.
And then I got to New York, and I remember listening to Jay-Z's song in my head as the bus entered New York. And then the looming shadow sort of came over me. And, I'll share this with you because I've never told anybody this. Leonard Nimoy came to see the play. I've got to tell you, every night...
Did you know he was in the audience before?
No. I mean, every night backstage, because Kate was lovely. I had this terrible small dressing room. She goes, just come downstairs and share my dressing room, which was huge. And I'd be down there, and then the play would end, and in would walk Meryl Streep. In would walk Martin Scorsese. In would walk, Lauren Bacall. And I got to meet all these people because they wanted to meet Kate. Leonard Nimoy came. Oh, by the way, one night Joel Schumacher, Joel Cohen, and Joel Grey came, and I was named after Joel Grey.
Surreal.
My parents named me after Joel Grey, so we've got a photo with the four Joels together.
Right. There you go.
So here's what I want to tell you: is Leonard Nimoy came along, and he said to me, I did Streetcar Named Desire. And I went, wow. I said, what role did you play? And I didn't know whether he would have been a Mitch or whether he would have been a Stanley. He said, I played Stanley. He did it in, I think it was Philadelphia. And the year that he did it was the year that the film came out. And he said, you talk about pressure.
My God.
He goes, try doing this play while the film is out at the cinema with Marlon Brando redefining the craft of acting. And there I am on stage trying to battle my way through it every night. And I suddenly went, that's pressure.
That's a great story. We are out of time. We've been talking to Joel Edgerton here about The Gift, which asks the question, what if someone from your past forced you to confront something that you have been hiding, even from yourself? Directorial debut. Really impressive job, sir. And terrific movie. And thank you for being with us. And
thank you. Great chatting again, man.